Good morning, everybody. So welcome to day 2 of the Canadian Autism Leadership Summit. I know there are folks who might be just joining us this morning. If you need French translation, simultaneous French translation, there are headsets available over by the sound team, so feel free to grab one if you need translation. So I just want to open up. I should introduce myself for those who weren't here yesterday. My name is Jonathan Lai. I'm the Executive Director of Autism Alliance of Canada. And I want to provide you with an overview of what to expect today, really briefly, before I turn it over to our MCs this morning. So yesterday we talked about inform. That was our theme. We learned a lot, we sat back, we took a lot of information in. Some of us might think a little too much information to fill our brains on one day. And today we're gonna roll up our sleeves a little bit. Today's gonna be about implementation. We're gonna talk about implementation in different ways, not just us as a community. We're gonna talk about how the federal government implements policy. We're gonna see some case examples through the disability tax credit. We're going to talk about implementation of how do we make sure lived experience is included in our organizations and ways to do so. So implementation at an organizational level, so government's level, at an organizational level. And finally, we've talked about this and you've received emails about this. This afternoon, we're going to talk about implementation for provinces and territories. We're going to have a workshop this afternoon, which everybody's going to be involved in any capacity you want. Some people may want to speak, some people would want to type, some people might just want to listen. But each table will split into the different regions across the country. There's going to be signs, and there's going to be a document that outlines what to expect, what we're going to do, and that document's also available on our website right now at the Summit website. So today's about implementation. The goal of the Summit is to hear your voice, that we can bring it forward together collectively. So that's what we're going to work through. We heard a lot yesterday about what we need to do next as the strategy is announced. Today we're going to focus on moving it forward as a community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our MCs for this morning, 2 of our board members, Anne and Pascal. Welcome. You'll need these.
Yeah, please take these. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Anne Cresta from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I've been on the board for a couple of years now. Very excited to be here.
Bonjour, mon nom c'est Pascal Castonguay, je suis la coordonnatrice du RNE-TSA, je suis aussi membre du conseil d'administration depuis 2 ans. My name is Pascal Castonguay, I'm the National Network of Expertise on Autism from Quebec coordinator, and I've been on the board of directors of the Alliance of Canada for 2 years now. So let's start today with some housekeeping duties. Here are some guidelines for the day. Embrace the opportunity to take space, make space. Allow yourself and others the room to express thoughts and ideas freely, fostering an environment of inclusivity and openness. Speak from your experience. Share your perspective authentically, drawing from your own encounters and insights to contribute meaningfully to discussions. What is said here stays here, and what is learned is shared widely. Respect confidentiality while also encouraging the dissemination of knowledge gained, promoting a culture of trust and collaboration. Assume good intent. Approach interactions with a mindset of trust and goodwill, fostering constructive dialogue and mutual respect. Consent to learn in public. Recognize and respect individual boundaries while engaging in collective learning experiences, ensuring a safe and supportive environment for growth and development. Take care of yourself. Prioritize self-care and well-being, acknowledging the importance of maintaining personal balance. And finally, the most important thing, have fun, have a laugh.
Right. So yesterday we had a very full day, as Jonathan said, and I'm just going to, Pascal and I are going to try to provide a recap just to start us off on a foundation of knowledge that we're going to take into the work we do today. So we started yesterday with an address by the Minister Mark Holland, and he talked about the concept of radical incrementalism and how that is guiding the work towards the National Autism Strategy. In our morning presentations, we heard about the need for continued and better coordination between provinces, learning from each other, and with the federal government. And to be an effective national autism strategy, we need to include all of the players, especially those with lived experience. We also congratulated the latest winner of the Jim and Jeanette Munson Award. So congratulations to CU for her amazing work. And also thank you to Elsbeth for the beautiful piece of art. We moved into the call for action for the National Autism Strategy as our provinces and territories prepared for the rollout, and we heard from different provinces and territories about their perspectives and what they're doing to help move the message forward. And in the afternoon, Pascal was able to summarize.
So we were glad in the afternoon that we could join the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, so Canada could be part of worldwide discussions on autism. We might not all have the same pace and level, but we certainly share ups and downs and need to learn from each other. It was inspiring to hear that autistic advocates from around the globe have their voices out and speak up to have things evolve for the better.
So we'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge all of the supporters that have put this event together. So you've seen through the slideshow, there are a number of them, but especially we would like to thank the Joyce Family Foundation, the Hamilton Health Sciences Center Foundation, and the Israeli Foundation for their generous contributions towards the summit. There's a special thank you to the Sinev Family Foundation for making the live stream option available for those who are not able to attend in person. And to learn more about our supporters, we invite you to check out our exhibitor booths during the breaks. We're also collecting testimonials about your experience here, what you've learned, something that particularly struck or stood out for you. And this is happening at the registration desk, so please identify yourself and say that you're interested in providing a testimonial. This just helps us as we're planning future events, and it helps us to get the word out about what a wonderful opportunity this is.
So now it's time for me to introduce the first speaker of the day, the Honorable Kamal Khera, Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disabilities of Canada. The Honorable Kamal Khera was first elected as the Member of Parliament for Brampton West in 2015. She has previously served as Minister of Seniors, as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development, as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue, and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Minister Khera is one of the youngest women ever elected to Parliament. A registered nurse, community volunteer, and political activist, she's passionate about improving the lives of those around her. Prior to entering politics, she worked as a registered nurse in the oncology unit at St. Joseph's Health Centre in Toronto, where she gained a deeper understanding of the issues that impact people's health and well-being every day. During the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, she went back to her roots as a registered nurse to volunteer at a hard-hit long-term care facility in her hometown of Brampton. Minister Khera continued to help on the front lines throughout the pandemic, including by administering vaccines in her community. Truly believing that diversity is our strength, Minister Khera is motivated to create a better present and future for all Canadians.
From the traditional territory of Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I want to thank Autism Alliance of Canada for inviting me to participate in today's incredible event. Before I begin, I want to say thank you and congratulations on hosting your 10th Annual Leadership Summit. Your leadership during the past 10 years have made a profound difference in the lives of so many Canadians. Our government has been a proud partner in your efforts to include autism in the national disability conversation and to promote meaningful changes for persons on the spectrum. This includes the work that the Autism Alliance of Canada and Inclusion Canada has done to support Ready, Willing, and Able, the National Partnership Initiative, which received $20 million in Budget 2022. This is a project about training, about jobs, about working with employers to match persons on the spectrum with employer needs. And in the true spirit of nothing without us, our government will continue to work with you and the entire disability community to achieve our shared goal of building a more inclusive and accessible Canada. At the same time, our government continues to work towards an autism strategy that addresses the needs of autistic Canadians through federal initiatives that allow them to live, work, and contribute to their fullest ability. But we know when it comes to building a more accessible Canada, the government can't do it alone. That is why I'm so grateful for events like these and the organizations like the Autism Alliance of Canada. The critical and constructive conversations that you're having today are helping us build a more accessible Canada. Once again, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and wish you all the very best for the rest of your conference. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you to the Honourable Kamal Khera for those remarks. I'd like to now introduce Mike Lake. As we're very familiar with Mike, we've seen him so much promoting and supporting and extolling the amazing qualities and personality that comes with autism. So Mike is a six-term conservative member of Parliament for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin. He served as Shadow Minister for Youth, Sport and Accessibility, International Development, and Mental Health and Addictions and Suicide Prevention. He has 2 adult children, his son Jaden and daughter Janae. The Lakes have been active supporters of autism organizations, families, and neurodiverse individuals across the country and around the world, while sharing their story of life with Jaden, who is on the autism spectrum.
My phone's not for notes, it's just a stopwatch, otherwise I'll blow through my time here. So Jaden is down from his sugar rush of last night, right? But you're just enjoying the chance to be here, and you're gonna say hi to everybody, of course, because you, go ahead and say hi. Ah! There you go. And it's great to, okay, so we're gonna hit the stopwatch. Now he's just gonna stare at the stopwatch the entire time, right? Pardon? Aw, do you hear that? Say thank you, yeah. We're gonna use our time, so we've had a chance to address some of you out on the Hill and some of you at the reception last night and tell some stories and other things. I think today we just want to talk a little bit about sort of the road towards the National Autism Strategy and sort of where my thinking is, I think, right now. And just almost share it as though it's like a Q&A, except I kind of anticipate what questions people might have. And so I'll just kind of give a little bit of inside baseball to kind of where my thinking is right now as we're kind of moving forward. The first thing I think I'd want you to know is just how critical you all are to the process, and the Autism Alliance of Canada, with all of you working together, has been to the process of where we are now. And it's funny because I've been a member of Parliament for 18 years, and when I got involved in the first place, it wasn't because of autism. This guy was 10 at the time I first got elected. And we realized fairly shortly after I was elected that the services that he got in Alberta back in 1998 to start when he was diagnosed were very different than what was offered across the country. And then as he got a little bit older, we realized that the services that we relied on when he was younger that were there, the same level of service wasn't there for him in maybe other parts of his life as he was getting older. And of course, we were all moving towards this sort of cliff at 18 years old. So that would have been 8 years after I was elected. So a few years into that, we were meeting with lots of people and doing some interviews. Actually, we got asked to do a few interviews first, and then led to connecting with a lot of stakeholders. And at the time, they were trying to put together this thing called CASDA. And as there always is in the autism community, there was a little bit of passionate debate about what ought to be and how we ought to move forward and those kind of things. And I remember, I think there was about 5 or 6 people, particularly some of whom were in this room at that time, trying to encourage me to encourage other people to get involved in CASDA. And I remember thinking at the time I didn't really fully understand it, and it probably took me a couple of years of trying to move forward on this idea of a national autism strategy championed by Jim. I'm not sure if Jim Munson's in the room here today, but obviously championed by Jim for many, many years. Took me a little while to kind of get my head around what that was, but I remember a particular meeting in 2013, so this is fast forwarding quite a ways. I remember Lonnie was in town. So Lonnie was in town for something else, and we thought, well, let's put together this group of people in the parliamentary restaurant, stakeholders, and people drove from Toronto and Montreal, and I think we had about 15 people in that room. And I remember having a conversation where we said, okay, you guys are all asking, I was in government at the time, you guys are all asking for a national autism strategy. We get together every year, we call the government for national autism strategy, but I don't think anyone really understands what it is we're looking for. And so we went around the room and people put on a list like 2 or 3 or 4 things that they thought were really important in a national autism strategy. And we drew out this list, and I remember at the time for me, consolidating that list down into sort of 6 areas of common ground. And if you've heard me speak, you've heard me say this over and over and over again. And it's particularly present now because now when I'm talking to my own leader, and we're in opposition right now, but when I'm talking to my own leader about any kind of policy, his question is, well, don't tell me about how much money you need. Tell me about the outcomes you're trying to achieve. What action steps, what outcomes do you want to achieve? And so those 6 things that we kind of came down to in that conversation on December 3rd, 2013 specifically, I remember the date, that's how important the conversation was to me, was just diagnosis. Oh, now, oh no, he's looking at my eyebrows again. I don't know. Did I miss those again? Did the light just catch something? Okay, we're gonna focus on comments today, but he also likes dates too, so it might be that. Okay, so December 3rd, we talk about diagnosis, we talk about early intervention. I know some people don't love the word intervention, early help, early therapy, whatever the word is. You know, we talk about education as a third thing. We talk about employment, housing, and then the 6th thing is sort of as parents, what happens when we're gone? For those parents in the room, I know that you think about that. What happens when we're gone? Is our country going to support our loved ones like we support our loved ones? Are we going to find ways to help them in whatever ways we help them? And so those are the things that we kind of centered on as kind of a core. And I think every iteration of a potential, whether you call it Canadian Autism Partnership or National Autism Strategy, those are things that have been front and center. Of course, there's lots of things to do with tax credits and health care and those kind of things that are kind of hardwired in. But you notice that we can attach outcomes to all of those different things. I think where we've gone on that journey is we had in 2014, it was interesting, Kamal mentioned that Ready, Willing, and Able. We got Ready, Willing, and Able actually was originally funded in 2014, a partnership between then CASDA and CACL, Canadian Association of Community Living, now Inclusion Canada. And it's been refunded by governments over the years of successive political stripes, different political stripes. We had the debate around the Canadian Autism Partnership in 2015 to 17, which we didn't get that across the line, but I think a lot of people really fought that fight, and I think it contributed to a place, even though we didn't get it in 2017 with that real push at that time, it contributed to a place where all of the parties now are appreciative of the idea that we need a national strategy, and I think all of the parties, 3 of the parties had it in their platform, and I think the 4th made a commitment in the last election campaign that wasn't actually written in the platform, but because of so many of you reaching out, it was a commitment was made. And that's sort of brought us to where we are right now. Of course, Lonnie chaired the Canadian CAHS report. I can never remember what everything's, Academy of Health Sciences report that was so important, and so many people were involved in that process. And there have been multiple discussions. Of course, Leo Husakos and Peter Beam, I wish they were here so we could give them a round of applause, because what they did in the Senate in moving this forward, building unanimity in the Senate and allowing us to build unanimous support in the House, add our voice to build that momentum towards where we are. So here we are today, and I know it's a subject of conversation here. I'll tell you, we want a national strategy, but we don't want a national strategy that's just a bunch of fancy words on paper. We want a national strategy that's going to lead to outcomes in all of the areas that we want to make life better for autistic Canadians, right? That's what we want. We want autistic Canadians to be able to fulfill the absolute fullness of their potential and contribute the skills and abilities that they bring to the table, again, in their fullness in this country, so that we all benefit from that. That's the national strategy we want, and I know that there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of really hard work going. I know that the Autism Alliance of Canada has been engaged in many of those conversations to try and get us to that point. Leo and Peter and myself and other members of Parliament from all parties are part of that conversation. And I do think that we're getting close. So I say that, you know, I would have liked to have seen funding in the budget for it. There wasn't funding in the budget. It's a good timing that we're all sitting here 2 days after the budget, so we're not speculating on what was in the budget, because we know what was in the budget and what wasn't. And we're going to continue to kind of push until we see us actually cross the line with a meaningful, comprehensive national autism strategy. But I do think we're getting very close. And it'd be lovely to be able to stand up here and celebrate the fact that we got it. We're not there yet, but we're getting very, very close. And I just, as I'm crossing the country, and I've got a minute and a half left here, as I'm crossing the country talking to autism stakeholders, the number one thing I'm saying to autistic Canadians, to anybody trying to make a difference, to anyone sharing their family story, anyone with an idea, I'm saying, you need to call Jonathan and Deepa. You need to join the Autism Alliance of Canada right now. That's the first step you need to do so you can be part of this critical conversation that's happening right now. And so with my last minute, I'll just say thank you all. I will actually say, first of all, the idea of rapid incrementalism, I think Mark talked about it yesterday. I'm pretty sure that came from a conversation I had with him a few months ago, because my staff was saying, you said that. I talk about rapid incrementalism all the time. Two thoughts of that in terms of this strategy. You either, in my experience, we can wind up with nothing, just constantly talking about it, or a bunch of words on paper because it's hard to figure out where we find common ground, or we can wait for unanimity. And we're never going to find unanimity, so then you get nothing too, because you're waiting for everybody to be on exactly the same page. Or we can find the areas that we have common ground, and there's probably lots of areas, just like we did on that December night in 2013. If we can find those areas we have common ground in, we can take incremental steps, which we've been doing for time. It'd be nice to wrap a strategy around that, and the strategy has to take that approach. But we can take this concept of rapid incrementalism and take small steps, medium-sized steps, really quickly, one after the other, and make huge strides for autistic Canadians in this country as we do that. So I will close by, in solidarity with the Minister of Health and the concept of rapid incrementalism as we move forward. I hope that soon we have a strategy that puts together mechanisms to bring all of the areas we have in common, that we can take strides in those areas right away, and that we build a structure into that system that constantly works with autistic Canadians, works with researchers that are out there, works with the stakeholders, and that we just take positive step after positive step based on evidence moving forward as we learn new things too. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. We're going to stick around for a while if people want to chat with us a little bit, and I'm going to let Jayden have the last word here. So there you go. Thank you, everybody.
So thanks again to Mike and Jayden. All of this morning's sessions are made possible thanks to the generous contribution of the Cine Family Foundation. Let me now introduce you to Tanya McLeod, President of the Cine Family Foundation, who will conclude today's opening remarks.
Good morning. I'd like to start this morning just by thanking the Autism Alliance of Canada for recognizing the Cine Families Foundation's sustained support to the Canadian Autism Leadership Summit. We have provided support for the last 10 years, and we're committed to providing support for the next 10 years. So you might be wondering, who is the Senev Family Foundation? Well, in 2008, Jim Senev established the foundation with a very generous gift and a mandate to improve the lives of autistic teens and adults. We're an operating foundation, which means we roll up our sleeves in Calgary. The team in Calgary gets involved in direct services to community. At the same time, we have broad national reach through collaboration and partnerships, extensive collaboration and partnerships. The National Centre for Autism Collaboration, formally announced last evening, is a recent example. I encourage you to connect with myself or my team members who are here. Visit our booth in the hallway if you want to learn a little bit more about our wonderful organization, because I'm not going to focus my time this morning describing all of the interesting things that we're involved with, but rather reflecting on the so what of our sustained support to this annual summit and what I have observed through the Alliance's work to bring the community together at this leadership summit over the last 10 years. I've personally had the privilege of participating in 9 of those summits, and I have a few reflections. I was thinking last night, I never prepare in advance. I've done the closing remarks at this summit for the last 5 years, and usually I just kind of like pay a lot of attention to what other people are saying and sort of synthesize that in some clever way, usually with some kind of acronym. So I was inspired yesterday by Elsbeth's beautiful piece of artwork. So I'm going to share my reflections today with letters. If you could advance to the next slide, please. The early years of the summit, starting in 2015, were really focused on connecting people, organizations, advocates, researchers, families, etc. All of the different stakeholders and players in the autism community. People rallied together following the Pay Now or Pay Later Senate report. Communication has been the cornerstone of the annual summit from the beginning, and it remains key to its impact today. Communication catalyzed by the summit has opened hearts, minds, and doors, and it goes beyond the space and the time of the summit. So that was really important. The early days was just bringing people together to share and learn from each other. I distinctly recall the summit of 2018, and in particular, a challenge or a call to action presented by the self-advocate panel, specifically Jackie McMillan. Jackie said we need to shift upstream in the alphabet from D to C, from disrespectful, devaluing, and dismissive approaches to caring, compassionate, and constructive approaches. In subsequent years, I have noted increased intentionality. There are more diverse voices and experiencing contributing to the dialogue, and there's elevated engagement of lived and living experience, grounded in acceptance and a strength-based perspective. So if I jump forward to 2022, the key themes of the summit that stood out for me were to ask the right questions to the right people at the right time. And I was chatting with Maddie last evening, and we're seeing more and more of that. Autistic voices involved from the beginning, particularly in the research domain. Listen with humility, respect, openness, and intent. And then act in ways that respect and embrace diversity, that recognize the importance and power of language, that is grounded in unconditional acceptance, and that is focused on meeting the needs of autistic people and their families where they are at. In my remarks in 2022, I framed this as moving downstream in the alphabet from A to E, from awareness and acceptance to empowerment and equity. Last year, the summit followed on the heels of Bill S-203, which passed unanimously in the House of Commons, as Mike was just sharing, to essentially start an 18-month clock on the development of a federal framework on autism. I synthesized my summit reflections last year with 3 letters, A, C, E. I told someone last night it was going to be a little bit of alphabet soup this morning. So A was for action, C was for coordination, and E was for empowerment. And for those of you who were there and you know me a little bit, you might recall I used a sports analogy, specifically an ace from the sport of disc golf, a hole-in-one, to help you remember that call to action. That brings me to this year, and my letters, reflections following day 1 are C, T, A. Any guesses? Call to action. We all have the opportunity to act within our spheres of influence to move things forward. If you find yourself feeling frustrated that we are once again here at the Autism Leadership summit, sitting around tables, talking about a national autism strategy, the development of a national autism strategy, what it should contain. Embrace the calls to action and do something about it. Don't wait for others to lead the way. We can all lead together through action. So, next slide, please. I leave you with 2 letters as my call of action for the next 10 years, P and R. Any guesses? I challenge us to move as a collective, to move from P to R. So for those of you with an affinity of physics, P is the symbol for momentum. We have forward momentum. Karen said it very well yesterday. We're seeing forward momentum. It may not be at the speed we would like, but there is tangible movement forward. The physics buffs in the room will know that momentum is the product of mass and velocity. So the more of us that take action, increased mass, and the faster we take that action, greater velocity, the more momentum we will generate. So think of this as a multiplier effect. But if all that physics stuff and the concept of momentum is too much for you to handle, think of P as progress. Let's continue to make progress. Okay, enough about physics. It's too early in the morning. The R in my call to reaction stands for results. We all want to see results. We want to create the conditions for autistic Canadians to exercise their full rights and realize their full potential. Theme that we're hearing over and over today, another way you might remember this with the letter R, radical incrementalization. Let's just move forward. Let's achieve results. So the final thought I want to leave you with this morning, if you go to the next slide, please, is that action creates momentum and results. So let's take action to continue to build momentum and achieve results. And please, let's not let perfection get in the way of progress. So P, progress, R, results. That's my call to action for you today. And for the next 10 years, I look forward to bringing forward what we're seeing through results at this summit and continuing to build and move that momentum forward. Thank you.